What's up? What's up?
Hey there, good to see you.
Good to see you as well. We're doing another episode of James Massey Live where we're interviewing agents that's killing it in the industry in order to provide tremendous value for real estate agents that's looking to grow and build their brand and have success in real estate. I'm here with Tracy Cousineau, and I'm telling you, if you don't know her, like I don't know where you've been, especially within the Metro Atlanta area. She is like dominating in so many areas, and I'm super excited to have her on about what she's going to be able to kind of share with everybody. But Tracy, we've known each other for a while now, and one thing that I do like about you, like you came from humble beginnings. If you don't mind for a few minutes, can you kind of tell people how you got into real estate and some of those humble beginnings? Because a lot of people they look at it and they say like, oh, she's this big right now, but it wasn't always that way, right?
No, and yesterday is going to be different than today, and today's going to be different than tomorrow. So, we're always offered a new day to start over. And so that's just, remembering that. I grew up with always being told to be quiet, never speak your mind, or, never have a voice. And so, living in such an introvert um, childhood, and then, into my first marriage, just really not having a voice. Once you get out of that and you start learning that, and maybe it was the victim mindset versus trying to always be positive, always look at a different way of it, and not have knee jerk reactions to a lot of stuff, really helped my mindset get out of that. Oh, you'll never make it, or listening to the haters of, oh, you'll fail. I remember when I opened the brokerage. I remember the gossip around town was, oh, it's only going to make it like 6 months, and it's been quite some time now. So, you never want to follow those patterns, or even be in an environment that doesn't support the things that you do, your opinions, or to tell you no the right way without it coming from a negative source. So with all that said, yeah, childhood was crazy. Moved out when I was young. I got into property management when I was 18 years old, and I was in it for 10 years. And in my 10th year, I didn't wake up going, oh, I'm going to be a real estate broker. Never. um, I just happened to be at the right time, right place at the right time, and drove by Gainesville College in Gainesville in Hall County, working in a property up there. And there was a situation that we had a resident that had done a lot of damage to the brand new property overnight. It kind of put me in a situation at the time with a 2-year-old that I didn't feel comfortable in, because his tenant started calling me from jail and stuff. So it put me in a not so easy, good, daily living. So passing that real estate sign at Gainesville College kept talking to me every day. It was red. It was real estate course, real estate course. I'm like, well, if I can make this kind of money leasing apartments, I should be able to sell some houses, right? Well, at that time, I got through the process, got my license in 1999, and thought it was just the next step, niche, whatever. But it's actually, after going through the Great Recession, I realized that it's actually a true passion. And it's more of the journey. It's the end result, whether it's the end result for the agent. And I took someone from not understanding the industry, providing all the tools and technology and all the leads and the appointments for them to grow and learn from all of that. And when it's time for them to be on their own, they're able to take what they learned. And at the end of the day, I know that everything I did to help them get where they are, and that's very rewarding. Not to mention your buyer and your seller, and their journey, what their end goal is. And we know this every day. Not every situation of working with a buyer or seller is always hunky dory, and or what their situation is. And so we do have a lot of hats that we play in this business. It's not just selling a home, and it's not this huge thing that people think where you make so much money. At the end of the day, it's not necessarily about that for me. It's more of who we've helped and what their journey looked like from the beginning to the end.
Yeah. One thing that I know that you pride yourself on is just being an expert advisor in and of itself, and just knowing the market, knowing the industry. Like how was that something that you did on purpose, that you knew that was the direction that you wanted your brand to be, as the expert advisor, or was it something that you started realizing over time that, hey, I know a lot more than a lot of other people in this process?
Yeah, I think you have to position yourself as the expert in any of, any industry that you're in. And you're there to, support, but also to really, you have to learn in a lot of industries, and it should never be in anything really. There's no gray, it's black and white. And being able to educate, being able to tell someone hard things. And a lot of agents unfortunately can't have those conversations. They have a hard time. And I was one a long time ago when I was an introvert. There's like, crap, I gotta have this conversation, with someone. And once you understand that they need you for that, you're in another category. I've got my certifications in a lot of stuff, and it's being outside of just that little box of being a real estate agent, that you want to show. And really, it's really, even if you're in the mortgage business or you're in the insurance business, it's parting yourself higher than the level that the person next to you is at.
Yeah. Now, it's funny that you said that you were an introvert. So, like, what I find is it's a lot of introverts, because I feel like I'm one as well. But we kind of push past that. So is that one of the things that you had to do, like push past the fear, push past the uncomfort in order to get in front of everybody?
Absolutely. I had the biggest fear of public speaking. I remember sitting in mastermind, um, Mike and Jay, and I remember when I first joined their mastermind a long time ago, and going around the room and having to introduce yourself, and what's one thing somebody doesn't know about you in this room or whatever. And this is the way I was, like, in school also, is just shy, didn't want to speak, didn't want to have that attention drawn on me. So it was very uncomfortable. So I would get to the point, I would my anxiety level was so crazy. I would start crying. Like, I couldn't get it out. And so I was always like, oh, I got to go to the bathroom, till I learned that, oh, they're waiting on me. Like, they're waiting for me to come back. So I guess I should go back. And, I just couldn't handle that anymore. With myself, it was something I had to get over. And not just that fear, but there were other fears. I was scared of water. So I was holding my children back from swimming or going to the beach. And, there were a lot of things that I needed to get out, myself, not to mention some childhood stuff that needed to get out of my head. And I did some Tony Robbins therapy, big time. And I remember Mike or Jay calling me, asking me to speak at an event, EGS, and I was like, I can't speak in front of people, no way. Knowing the event was going to be so big, I was like, no, I just can't do it. So I go to Tony, go through Unleash the Power Within. I remember walking out of there and calling them and going, can I still speak? I don't care if you put me on at lunch. I don't care if you put me on after the show during breakdown. I don't care. I just need to push through this. And it was like 2 weeks later, and I did it. It was good. Haven't looked back since.
Yeah. I mean, I've been to a few events that you put on, and just had you up there just talking away, and to anybody else, they're like, what, she does this all the time. I'm like, what are you talking about? She was scared, like scared. What are you saying? It's just like, but I mean, it's one of those things, like you said, like you got to push through. And Tony Robbins, he got a way to make people do the thing that they know they should be doing anyway, right?
Yep. Front and center.
Yeah. So all right. So we're talking about, like, you have a mega team, right? And you've been able to sell a ton of houses, and help a lot of families either sell their home or buy their first home. But on top of it, you've been like a dominant force in this in your marketplace. What are some of the things that you've done that you think that made you to be as successful as you are right now?
Um, you know, I think just standing out, and it's kind of like, having I think everything just kind of fell in line of at the beginning, well, I still do, but at the beginning, I had to look at it and understand that I was my biggest competition. But I also had to step back and realize, how does it feel to be like when I purchased my first home? What were the things that I know now that I wasn't told then? And how that went. And then, as a seller and, and a buyer, putting my feet in those shoes to understand what the industry needed, what real estate industry, what buyers and sellers were thriving for. And so I really just took from a lot of different resources and then my mind and just created stuff. Um, I'm really big on marketing but the full image. So my image is very, means a lot to me, so it's making sure that everything that we put out there content wise all looks good. Everything has the same message. We're not confusing the public, across the board. But then it's putting a face with a name, putting a face with a company. So those things are huge because it's always good you can hear somebody's voice, you can see somebody's name and envision what you think they look like, and isn't normally that different once you actually see them. So I think that, being familiar with someone before you pick up the phone or being able to identify someone brings a bigger rapport up front. So really just making sure that people know who you are and that your face always matches your name and that your image is vanilla across the board on everything. And really making sure that you keep that promise.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I know for me, I mean, I see you all the time. I see you on social media. I hear your commercials. I hear, what I'm saying, like, you just kind of dominating in that aspect of things. Like, all right, so in the beginning, what were some of the things that you did to start that process? Because, like, as you built and you start having a big brand and start selling a lot of homes, obviously you're able to market more because you have the money to do it. But what are some of the things you might have done early on to kind of get yourself out there even more?
I did a lot of events. Honestly, I would show up at like fairs or, high school football games and sponsor or put a table out there and give out free swag. Just getting out there and meeting and greeting people, being a part of, it was really big in the schools and, rec is, really where I started, just being a part of the community. And I think that you have to be a part of your community. You have to give back to your community.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's
And really it's just starting, small, even just having open houses. I know we're getting back into that world again. But just go meet the neighbors. Like, people have to identify, and the more that they can identify, the more your name is going to stick with something. And then for me, it was, we can all sit there and say jingles that we hear on the radio or TV that we have as a child, as we have as an adult, and they stick with you. And so that was huge. Once the brand started, getting out there, and, I changed the brand name because to Tracy Cousineau Real Estate versus Real Estate Expert Advisors, because people were seeing my name and hearing my name, and the Real Estate Expert Advisors part was being lost, even though it's an Inc. 500 company. It still was getting lost. And so bringing my name into it just really was a smarter decision that I made, coming into this year, just to brand it all across the board. I was missing that part. It's putting my name on everything, but then I was still putting the brokerage, where now everything just matches.
man. So speaking of the name, you told a story that I was at one of the events where you was talking about how one of the commercials came up from like with one of your daughters. Um, if you don't mind sharing that whole thing, because I mean, when I heard it, I was like, oh man, that is so precious.
I'm trying to, about my daughter doing the jingle.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So yeah, I was going down the road with her. She was, oh gosh, 3 or 4, not, maybe not even, she might've been 3. And she was in the back seat, and I was on the phone with a telemarketer, and I was interested in just because I'm always interested in people's products and, how they like try to get you to buy stuff, like what's their hook. And so I always, if a telemarketer calls, I'm like, oh, just email it to me, that way I can just kind of pick through stuff and look at it. And so I kept trying to give him my email address, which is my first and last name. And he just couldn't get the last name. And I kept saying it and spelling it. And finally, I was like, and I'd never said this, like, since I've had this last name since 1994, never said it this way. It's cousin with an EAU. And Callie pipes in the back because she, in her southern voice, that's cousin, or it's cousin with an EAU, because my mom was going to sell you a home. She was just like, and then I started laughing. I threw my foot on the brake and I turned around and I go, what did you just say? She goes, because mama just all sassy, because my mom was going to sell your house. And so from that point, forward, I went, the first production of this was, I got her kilo dressed, got her hair done. She was holding the real estate sign, walking into the office. There were balloons around her. And she sat down at the desk and she said the whole entire jingle. And then she had like a pretend contract in front of her. And we didn't even tell her to do this. She had little glasses on and she took the pen and, like, how you like bang it and it opens or closes or whatever. So she says, click, click, after she said it. And it was the cutest thing. But yeah, so she's a spokesperson.
Man,
She gets the royalties.
Yeah, exactly. Just make sure you break off a little percentage for her, because it's stick. I hear it all the time. So
yeah, I mean, I've been out of state and been places, and people are like, wait, I visited. I remember being in Orlando at an event, actually a mastermind event, with Dean and somebody, and there were like 12 of us, and everybody's introducing themselves. And after I introduced myself, 2 people down, he looks and he goes, Cousineau, it's cousin with an EAU. He goes, my mom lives in Georgia. And I hear that every time I go visit her. You're that girl. And then someone else from like Boston said, like, oh yeah, I've been through Atlanta. I've heard that before too. So it was here, people from, I think this guy was like Pennsylvania. His mom lives in Georgia. And then this other guy was in Boston. So it's kind of crazy, that it does have that much. And so you have to look at that. Jingles aren't always easy. Listen, I tried for a long time to come up with one, and it just rolled right out of her mouth. So sometimes we need other people to like look at it. Like I needed her to look at it and be able to take it, and because what I was trying to do wasn't working. And so people that know you, like she knew me, she knew, fun stuff. So if you find someone in your corner that knows a lot about you, and just say, hey, listen, I want to come up with something that sticks, like take my name and figure out something, right? Because I've had professionals do it and go, I would be embarrassed to put this out there, So it just kind of really made it all worth it.
But I mean, it's still like it's almost like pre-selling, because like when people are hearing that, I mean, they feel like they already know you, they're already connected. People do business who they know, like, and trust. So right there, just from building that brand presence. And then, when they go to your website or they start seeing stuff from other things or other resources that you're marketing to, it's almost like, you become the celebrity in the area before you even go to a listing appointment, right? Or meet with the buyer, right? So um, being able to create something like that is huge in of itself. Um, what I want to ask is, like, because you've been so successful in some of the stuff that you're doing, like, what are some of the things, because I know you're a giver. So what are some of the things that you're doing to give back in order to help other agents to achieve their goals as well?
For me in my brokerage, understanding marketing, I mean, how many agents are there, right? There's
Yeah.
tons of us. How do you stand apart? How do you stand apart from? I can go down the road, or I can see literature and look at it and go, man, if had they said it this way, it probably would have gotten more attention. Or they're wasting a lot of money doing it. Like, you can't just put your name on a billboard or I sell real estate, and that's just where a lot of minds go to. Just because you're in real estate, what are you offering? What do you, not only your education, your experience, but what else are you offering? Why would they choose you? And that's what your marketing has to be focused on is, why, James, why do your clients choose you? How do they find you? How do they choose you? And do you look the same? Because they all stalk us before they
Yeah.
even call us too. And so how does your image look? How does all of that look? And so really teaching them that and helping them understand that there is no gray. It's black and white, stay vanilla, in be out there in your community, being the best that you can be in this industry. Um, Going back to it, a lot of people just don't know how to market, and they also don't want to get on the phone.
Yeah.
So I know that I don't like to get on the phone and make cold calls or warm calls. I would be doing something else. I love to market. I love to real estate. I love to coach, people. So um, I have a team who does that, who they love to do that. That's what they do. And so being able to have, whether it's a new agent, a brand new agent, or an agent who's maybe been in the business for a year or two that just couldn't get to where they wanted to be in the industry and needs a little push, or someone that's been in the industry for a long time and understands how much it costs to market, how much it costs per lead, depending on the source, and really just want to be the person that shows up and does the best job face to face.
Yeah.
And so that's what we do. I have an inside sales department, and they set the appointments. They're calling the leads every day, all day. So that gives the agents time to do the one-on-one with the client, but also have time for their family.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think like, what you're saying, you know, focusing in on what you're good at and taking off the hats. Cause I think a lot of agents, what we do is we have all these hats that we're wearing, but, really we're probably the bottleneck in a lot of those areas because that's probably not something that we should be doing or focusing on.
I'll
And
tell
like,
you a good thing that I learned. I have really had a hard time delegating. And I've learned a lot throughout the years. I've learned a lot of lessons in the last couple weeks and months of delegation. That some things you don't want to delegate, but maybe I over delegated because I started enjoying delegating. But at first, I was like, "I'll just do it. I can do it faster. I'll just do it myself." It's or I want to make sure it's done the right way, and I'm the only one that can do it. Getting out of your own head, right? And so I remember taking a big legal yellow piece of paper and drawing a line down it. And on the left-hand side, I I think I went through probably 3 or 4 days of doing this. Everything I did throughout those 3 or 4 days, I wrote down on this left-hand side of paper. Brushing my teeth, like everything, driving to the school or going to pick up lunch, all these things, right? And then after the 3 days, I first crossed off everything that someone couldn't do for me. Nobody can go to the bathroom for me. Nobody can shower for me. Nobody can. I don't want anybody brushing my teeth but myself.
yeah,
And I took off those kind of things that I didn't need to focus on because those were just stuff you had to do anyways. And then I looked at being a leader. I looked at what my day-to-day operations looked like. And at the time, I was also in a lot of appointments, 6, 7 appointments a day. And so I had to look at the things that someone else could do while I was doing other things that were more productive. It was a huge aha moment because, then it was like, oh crap, how am I going to pay for this, right? Like, how much does this cost an hour or whatever? And then once you get through that, then you're like, man, I have all this other stuff that I didn't mark off that really I could delegate too. So then you hire number 2, right? And then you start delegating that. And then you're like, man, there's more stuff I could delegate. Let me get the third person. And then as you grow and things get bigger and there's bigger things going on, then you start bringing in more people and more people. And so that's kind of just how it grew. Is, if it was at a standstill, you'd never grow, right? So it's always, looking back and going, man, I'm glad that I had those things to delegate. But it's getting off that fence to say delegation is not a bad thing.
yeah.
And, as long as you have the right people.
I mean, it's hard though, right? At first, because like you're
It
used
really is.
to like having the whole thing and being in control. I know I can do it, but it's necessary, like you said, for growth. I mean, you started doing that, and things started to kind of just take off right there, right?
Right. hmm I mean, even got to the part of, for me that, oh, I can't remember, maybe 8 years ago, I was like, man, it'd be really good if I had somebody to drive me around while I did all this negotiation between appointments or worked on this during appointments, because I was getting home late at night from appointments. And then I would go home and work, even if I went to even take the kids to like Six Flags. I remember always, and this is back when payphones were at Six Flags. This was a long time ago. I remember like getting paged or whatever and having to go to a phone at the park. And my kids are like, well, you never have time for us, like you're always on your phone. And I never want to be in that business. And, it was so time consuming. And so I finally did it about 8 years ago. I was like, okay, I'm going to find someone that's going to drive me around. I'm going to find the best vehicle for that. And it paid for itself the first weekend. I think I listed $4 million worth of property that first weekend, that I got a driver and the limo, and it from that point forward, it was a blessing.
But that's one thing about you, as far as, I mean, I know just from our conversation before, because I actually sat with you and kind of picked your brain, took you out to lunch. So, but you know your numbers, like, I mean, and I think a lot of people don't know their numbers. So, like, when you're saying it paid for itself, like, I'm sure you looked at the cost for a particular thing and what it was going to take, and you start putting the numbers together to make that happen. How important do you think just having the data and tracking is, for a real estate agent, in order for them to build and grow?
I have spreadsheets for spreadsheets for spreadsheets. So I'm always curious, and but I'm also severe ADHD. So you could tell me something all day long, but if I don't see it the way that I need to see it on a spreadsheet, then it doesn't make sense. And so that's why I have so many spreadsheets, but I need to know that, right? All the way down to lead sources. You know, I track even what comes to my voicemail that I forward off to, for someone to call. You know, it's documented. And after that source came in, that it came from my phone, or if it came from Facebook, or if it came from a neighbor or a referral, well, how did that referral find me? How did this voicemail get to me? Did they see my billboard? Did they see me um, on TV, or do they hear me on the radio, or they see the sign in the yard? They see my van, whatever. I want to pinpoint it down to that immediate resource, so that if something isn't working, I'm not spending the money on that. I can go take it and put it somewhere else that is working. So you definitely have to know. Like, I am very, I want to dive all the way down to that source.
Yeah, I mean,
So you
it
have to know
matters.
that to be able to spend your money, to know what your numbers are.
Yeah. It's funny because, like, I mean, I've talked to agents before, and they talk about, like, all right, I'm spending this money and I'm getting X amount of leads, and I was like, all right, so, um,
What's your conversion on those
the
leads, though?
conversion of those leads, like, that's the next question, right?
Right?
And, so you got to know more than just, hey, I'm spending money, I'm getting leads. It's like the conversion rate, and if there's another lead source that will have better conversion rate, that you can actually put your money there. So, like, knowing that data and keep you wouldn't know that if you didn't track, right?
Mm-mm. No. I mean, I can have Boomtown all day long. I can have Commissions Inc. all day long. I can have Zillow all day long. I can have all these websites all day long. And the leads come in, the leads come in, the leads come in. But what does that conversion look like? And how many of these leads are being sold to other agents?
There you go. There you go. You're absolutely right about that, and that's something that, like, we don't like to think about, but I mean, we know it happens, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I even have large website companies and lead sources that, of course, use my name and keywords and target, so that if somebody does go to Google and type in Tracy Cousineau, you have all these other referral people that are trying to send me my own business that was coming to me anyway.
Yeah.
So, you have to dive into that too. Even if I said, okay, well, this person came from Homelight. And then when we go meet with that person, did you really come from Homelight, or how do you know about us? And then it comes, oh, no, I heard you on the radio, or I this or that. they just typed in the name and didn't go directly to our website, or they might have logged into Zillow or to HomeLight or whatever. So it looked like that came from the lead source. So you can't trust that. You have to keep asking, like really dissect it, because I always tell um, my agents is they don't know where you live, but you know where they live.
There you go.
And so if someone wakes up today and says, James, I think I'm going to sell my house today, do they know where to find James at?
Yeah.
I'm hoping they know where to find me at.
Yeah.
And that's the goal is, okay, well, if they don't know where I live or they don't know where my office is and they don't know who I am, how can I get them to know who I am? What am I going to do to make that happen? So it's just, being seen and heard everywhere.
Love it. Love it. But Tracy, man, it's been absolutely, great to have you to kind of share and talk, and no, your story in of itself. I mean, it's inspirational to so many folks. So I appreciate you coming on board. Once again, we do these every Thursday where we're interviewing an agent that's killing in the industry in order to provide tremendous value. If you got any questions for me or Tracy, I mean, definitely reach out to us. I mean, I know she got the same heart of mine, which is a given, and just trying to help. So, like I said, I appreciate you, Tracy, and hopefully we'll be able to see each other soon here. Coming around
Yes,
and
absolutely. It was great spending some time with you this morning and everybody out listening. And yeah, if anybody has any questions for me or needs a little help, please feel free to reach out to me.
love it, love it. All right, y'all. To the next time. Appreciate you, Tracy.
Thank you. Appreciate you too. Bye, everyone.